Alright guys, HyDra again today. Hope you're doing well and enjoying your day so far. Dashy has revealed exactly what sort of contract HyDra might potentially be on at the moment, and certainly going into next year as well, given the offers that it seems are currently flying around, saying he doesn't need to stream because the money is just far too good. But also Scump talking about this potential Los Angeles Thieves super team, if it does potentially get formed, and saying, yeah, that is a serious threat to the very best teams in this league. Very much interested your thoughts in the comments section below. Hit the like button if you enjoy. Subscribe if you're new as always, I greatly appreciate it. Some drama at a LAT event here I just thought was pretty funny here to share, I'm not going to lie, for the intro. The first thing though to talk about is the follow-up here from Damon Karma Barlow on what we saw the other day. As he said, Black Ops 6 drops, Scump, Formal Karma playing on a kickoff, like, I can't believe it, right? Now, obviously, the original way to read this tweet is like, wow, imagine if that was happening, that would be crazy. And, I think, as we talked about yesterday, it seems pretty likely that it could well happen. And it is happening. Maybe not in the form that we expected, though, because OpTic are running an OpTic Legacy match with the Dynasty itself. So this I thought was a fantastic post. So this is the 12th of October. So, this isn't actually when Black Ops 6 launches, unfortunately, although I'd love to see them run this back when the game actually launches, to be fair. This is a picture, of course, of the, at the World Championship. This was taken just so backstage of the walkouts where the players walked out for the World Championship in Texas. Just behind that, that's where this picture was taken, of course. And this was on the Sunday, obviously, because we've got Bandana Kenny here coming out on the main stage. So, yeah, these were the OpTic boys before their Grand Finals appearance where they took down the New York Subliners to win the title. And famously, of course, the OpTic Dynasty team walked out first, and there was talk about, the Dynasty buff and all this, wasn't there, right? Like, somehow that was going to help them. And, look, a couple of people saw this coming because Scump disappeared from the watch party when this was happening, but it was still an absolutely legendary moment. Really cool to see live in person because, we were on our own watch party. We didn't know what was going on elsewhere. We hadn't heard this is going to be happening. So, just one of the great things that OpTic did for production at that event. And, yeah, here are the guys with Hex, of course, in the centre, having built these teams over the last several years. And they're running a match between these two respective teams. October the 12th, doors open at 3 p.m. local time or whatever. So, yeah, Scump says running it back. You guys can attend at the Esports Stadium in Arlington, which is interesting just because there were rumours that they were going to not shut this down, but there were rumours that OpTic were no longer going to own this or basically this space, right? They had their own stadium, Arlington, for a couple of years. I don't know if they still do, or whether they're now just going to rent it on a more kind of, event-to-event basis, which maybe makes more sense than having their own thing, to be fair. But tweet your thoughts, as always, in the comments section below. A couple of things on the coaches. We've seen the other day that FaZe, they got rid of, basically for budget reasons, Tupac, their search and destroy coach. Of course, their search and destroy record over the last few years has been great. It's always difficult to say how much the coaches really do, though, isn't it? Because I think everyone knows Tupac's a valuable guy, and Drazah was in his replies the other day saying, absolute legends, best of luck, you'll get another team. And I think there's probably a feeling from the FaZe boys of, damn, we had budget cuts, that's unfortunate we had to get rid of this guy, because it definitely seemed like OpTic, once they let him go from Huntsman to go to FaZe, that seems like an error in hindsight. And of course, FaZe's search and destroy record over the last few years has been very, very good indeed, which makes sense, but also, would it have been good anyway, right? This is always the difficult thing as a coach. It's like, well, if you're Tupac, you're saying, hey, well, these are the records of my team. We got this search and destroy win streak. We achieved this, we achieved that, and that's all true. But, what would they have achieved anyway? You've got Simp, aBeZy, Cell on the team, and of course, last year when they broke that search and destroy win streak record, they had Slasher on the team, an absolute epic, legendary search and destroy player. So, you want to give Tupac his credit, but also another organisation is going to look at him and say, well, maybe our team can be fine without him, right? Unless you've got the budget to make that happen, and many of the organisations are not in that spot right now, unfortunately for them. Even ReeaL goes on to say, one of the greatest things about coaching is seeing the brothers you form deeper connections with go on to do great things. Bittersweet, but always supporting even from afar. So, yeah, of course, Java looking for his next opportunity, isn't he, right? Because he's now been let go from Cloud9, or at least been allowed to explore opportunities. So, where's he going to go? Of course, there are rumours that Zuma floated a while ago that maybe the Falcons were going to be interested. That is not exactly so clear at the moment. Just a quick idea on what exactly Toronto might be up to. We talked about the CleanX and Insight are probably going to be staying over there. Beans is potentially the likely Scrappy replacement, if anyone. Does raise questions where Sib is going to go, right? And obviously the likes of JoeDeceives would potentially be available. There's other players such as Nero Nero that would potentially be available, but I'm not sure Nero and CleanX is really the way to go personally. There are a couple of interesting options that they have on their hands over there, but the reality is that Toronto are probably not going to be signing any superstars. It's more than likely that their one superstar is going to be going, and they've got to, fill the gaps from there. Of course, Dashy has therefore been talking about what's happening on the HyDra situation, right? Because we know full well that HyDra is being targeted, according to what we saw from Jack Etienne, CEO of Cloud9 earlier today, that he probably wants to leave Cloud9 and the Subliners. So where's HyDra going to go? If OpTic come along and they say, hey, you want to come here, which they're not going to, then sure. If FaZe said the same thing, then potentially sure. But of course, that's not going to happen either. So realistically, there's a couple of options. There's Los Angeles Thieves, and there's potentially this whole gentle mate if they buy the Los Angeles Guerrillas situation to make that work. So either way, he's probably going to LA, or at least it's going to be on an organization based out of LA. And well, there's a lot of money, I imagine, involved in some of these numbers, right? Drake's was talking about it on the flank yesterday, to what extent these guys are getting paid, and potentially how ridiculous that may or may not be. But also Dashy saying, look, HyDra, talented guy, entertaining personality actually when he does stream, but he doesn't stream all that often in the grand scheme of things, and the reason why is because he's on the absolute Supermax, so he doesn't really care, which is fair enough. And at the end of the day, if you win, you stand to make a fair bit of money as well. But I'm sure HyDra realise on the couple of times that he has streams that, there is probably a fair bit of money to be made and won by doing so. And still though, HyDra's on some big bag over at the Cloud9 team, and as a result, streaming isn't necessarily a priority, and wherever he goes next, you'd imagine that this potential big bag might well be matched or exceeded by whatever other organisation is trying to sign him into their roster.
I stream like once a year.
Tripping, bro. You got to.
Because you should see he's on the Supermax, so it's like, doesn't really give a fuck about
Yo,
what are you
even
saying?
This
guy's on
UpTic Gaming. I know your contract, bro.
He's on UpTic Gaming. Do we know what's happening over there, bro?
Paco can buy the whole country, bro.
No. I wish.
He could definitely buy Texas, that's for sure.
You're not low, bro. We know the truth.
I'm good. I'm okay.
He's doing fine.
I was not. I was actually surprised by some of the numbers I was hearing. I didn't realize how high some of these numbers were. I mean, I'm hearing numbers in the 500,000 range, like 750,000 range. Like
that's more than that. That's more than 500,000. What?
There's like a handful of
no, I
players
said
that aren't even
both.
worth it.
I'm saying both. I'm saying
that
500,000 and 750. I'm saying both. Like I'm hearing all different types of, which is like, bro, holy shit! Like that's just burning money if you're an organization. Like that is so much money. Unless that player has like an insane brand that's like bringing back money to you, it doesn't make sense. It doesn't make sense.
Content is king.
Like
bro.
Shotzzy, you could probably pay Shotzzy a lot of money. I don't know what he's on, but
yeah,
you
100%.
probably pay him a shit ton of money.
50 grand. This is crazy. Fucking crazy.
We're cooked, bro.
Just to play the game, bro. Like they don't do content or anything. That shit is wild.
Booked.
So wild, crazy.
No wonder
bro.
we're budget cut.
Normal is gonna be streaming forever. Yo. Yeah, wait, what's going on? Yo, LAT roster news came out. When did that come out yesterday? Did that come out yesterday? And what's the roster? What? HyDra, Scrap, Ghosty, and who's their fourth? Envoy. Yo, I'm not gonna lie. If that team becomes a real thing, that team is pretty fucking good. That team is pretty good. Bro's acting like he ain't going to Nade's house every other day. Bro, I ain't been to Matt's house since I choked on that meat. Actually, that's not true. Can we get 5 gifted on the stream for the bald head? Yo, apologies. I don't know. The time seems right. Apologies. You sent the message. Did Nade tell you anything? Guys, I'm not going to lie to you. Listen, I love my community a lot, okay? But even if Matt did tell me what was going on with the roster, I would not tell you guys. You guys are sick. You guys think that I would just out my boys' team like that? You guys are fucking insane. You guys are fucking insane. But for 100 gifted, listen, I'm just like I'm just like the rest of everybody on this website. I'm an absolute fucking fiend for the G word, that sweet, sweet gifted sub. But even for 100 gifted, I can't do that to my absolute boy.
So I think I agree with Zuma here that I wasn't really aware that the salaries were apparently getting to this type of level. I mean, we've heard rumors over the last few years of like 400, maybe 450k, something in that ballpark. The idea that some of these guys are getting paid over $500,000 a year, just pure salary, would add up with the fact that HyDra's like, I don't need to stream, what are we talking about here? But it does maybe make sense because last year, Boston, there was a rumor that Boston were trying to give Envoy 400k, 420k, something like that, to go and join Boston and play for them when they were just throwing around the bag. They've obviously given up throwing around the bag now, at least Boston, and they're changing their mentality, which is probably for the best. But still, if Envoy was getting offered anywhere near 400 grand to play for Boston per year, he turned it down and took less money to go to Toronto. What are some of these other guys getting right? Like, you know, obviously Envoy, great player, but, you know, he's not quite a Simp or a aBeZy or like a Shotzzy or a HyDra or like a player, maybe a Scrappy, potentially, at that caliber. Depends on the organization what they're going to pay, but you know what I'm saying, right? That if Envoy was on 400 or potentially could have been on 400, then what about on the top teams? What sort of money are they paying their guys? Like, to be fair, HyDra was rumored to be on like a 500k a year salary, wasn't he, when Subliners managed to keep him around, when he was potentially going to go to OpTic, when Scump was going to retire, but he decided not to retire, so he stays on Cloud9 HyDra and, you know, was potentially offered a big bag, but then there were rumours that actually no, it wasn't 500k a year because at that point then there was no competition for HyDra, so they could bring it down, but maybe that didn't happen, right? We don't really know, and it's not public, so we're never really going to know the full answers, but of course, Ben and Zuma, they're talking about some of these potential numbers, and, you know, the reality is that this seems rather unsustainable to me, but let's be real here, right? The YouTube deal that pays to some of these teams will, you know, be paying them probably a good couple of $100,000 a year, in that kind of ballpark, right? So for some teams, if you're paying the minimum, that's enough to basically cover your entire salaries for the year. If you're some of these other teams, I mean, you know, how much content and sponsorships and merchandise sales you got to pay to fund $500,000 a year for a single player? Then you've got 3 other players, then you've got a coach, and you've got travel and expenses. I just don't see how the books are meant to balance, and the reality is that they're not balancing for a lot of these organizations. And you know, there's talk about a salary cap, but you know, that's difficult to enforce. You just got to rely on the organizations making sure they can do a sensible job in the future. But of course, the players are always going to want more money, and why wouldn't they, right? And nothing against the players getting the bag. It's more about whether this is sustainable for the esport, for some of these guys to be getting paid what they are getting paid. Whether Los Angeles Thieves can come close to matching some of those numbers, especially if they're paying for buyouts, that seems very unlikely. So look, they're working on whether they can afford the amount of money to potentially make this team happen. Scump, of course, says that if it does happen, wow, that is a serious roster getting formed for next season. But very much interested in your thoughts in the comments below. Just one final thing I thought was kind of interesting here, actually, to look back on. Who are the casters for every single COD Champs Grand Final match? Because there was some talk lately about whether, you know, who are the premier casters in COD. Some people still love Maven and Merc, as I do. I think they're brilliant. Miles and Chance, you know, I find them brilliant as well. Everyone's great. Like, I love the casters that we have in Call of Duty. For the last 3 years, Miles and Chance have been the premier casters, and they've casted the World Championship Grand Final. But back in the day, Black Ops 2, FaZe and Benson. Ghost was FaZe and Puckett. Puckett then did it with Benson in Advanced Warfare, so that was a different type for sure. Then, of course, Maven and Mr. X took over. Courage kind of famously also casted the Infinite Warfare Grand Finals, which is actually a really good tri-cast, if you guys remember that one. Then Maven and Merc, of course, took over after Merc basically retired and went into casting. They did it for 4 years straight. Now Miles and Chance have taken over. But very much interested in your thoughts on all of this stuff in the comment section below. Hit the like button if you enjoyed. Subscribe if you're new. Take care. And I'll see you next time.